Hi there, Telebait here with another Legends of Runeterra deck guide. This time we're looking at a Vi Heimer deck, and the moment I played this deck, it was instantly successful. This deck is using an Ionia combination as opposed to the more standard Targon combination I've seen a lot of, and it uses Give It All as its main win condition, and I've had a lot of fun playing this deck. So let's get into the deck. So I built this deck around two cards really, which are Heimerdinger and Give It All. These cards have great synergy together because Heimerdinger creates lots of tokens with lots of different keywords, and then you use Give It All to give all your turrets all the keywords. So you have turrets stacking in with Fearsome, Overwhelm, Elusive, and you just kill your opponent off in one turn using this big attack in with Give It All. And the great thing is Give It All is Grant, so even if you don't kill your opponent on that first attack, you can kill them in the next attack because they all have that keywords, and it allows you to use Give It All on your opponent's attacking turn. So it has that nice flexibility. The big disadvantage it has is it needs you to have that board, but a champion like Heimerdinger allows you to get that board really easily if you manage to get his units rolling off. So for this deck, I decided to use Ionia as the additional region, and that's mainly because they have a lot of good tools which help protect Heimerdinger and help stall out to reach your late game win condition. Deny, Concussive Palm, Twin Disciplines are great at protecting Heimerdinger. Deny can protect you from things like Vengeance, Concussive Palm protects you from challenges, and Twin Disciplines protects you from removal. One thing to note is that two of these spells are at 4 mana, so generally you play Heimerdinger on turn 6 with 3 banked spell mana, that way you can use these spells. If your opponent has removal which you know can be stopped with Twin Disciplines, then you can play Heimerdinger on 5, but generally I look to play Heimerdinger on 6, and I would play Vi on 5 if I had her in hand. For the early game with this deck, I have Chempunk, Pickpocket, and I'm a really big fan of this card. So against aggro matchups, it just creates a good blocker, and it creates this threat where your opponent's willing to trade badly into it. And then on the other end of things, in the control matchup, this card forces out removal. So this is removal that they want to be saving for your Heimerdinger, they end up using on your 2-drop, and you're so happy about this. And then my other early game units are Solitary Monk and Tasty Feyfolk. Solitary Monk's just quite a good card, puts a bit of pressure on your board, and it's again one of these cards which soaks removal. Your opponent just wants to deal with it because it's elusive and it's annoying. And Tasty Feyfolk has proven to be such a strong card into many control decks. 4 attack with lifesteal is just insane and the bane of so many aggro decks, so this card is just so great against things like Scouts. And I've seen the odd weird burn deck around as well. It's a new patch at the moment, so I've seen a lot of weird different things, but this is great at shutting down aggro decks. Then for removal, I run Thermo Beam, Mystic Shot, and Get Excited. These are very standard P&Z removal cards. The reason I run Get Excited instead of Gotcha is because we have Solitary Monk, and if you draw Solitary Monk late, you can use her as discard fodder for Get Excited. It's quite a good combo, these two cards. Like, if you get her on turn 3, this is great. If you get her later, you can just use her with Get Excited and you don't mind. I also run 1 copy of Tribeam Improbulator, and I did run 3 of these before, but I actually switched them out to Concussive Palms because I needed a way to deal with Challenger units challenging my Heimerdinger and killing him that way. So I cut this down only to 1, and because I've got this Tribeam Improbulator, I've generally gone for quite a few free drops. You could possibly switch this deck in a way to have less free drops because I'm only running 1, and you could even cut this out and run less free drops. But this deck's performed quite well for me, so I'm happy with it how it is. And the main card which combos really well with this is Flash of Brilliance. Flash of Brilliance is just a great card with Heimerdinger in general. It just creates you that turret as soon as you play Heimerdinger, and it doesn't cost any mana because it gives you all your spell mana back. Just a great card. And finally, as removal really is Vi, and the reason I call her removal is because her main purpose in this deck is just to stop your opponent's board getting wide. You play it down, you just get rid of all your opponent's small units, and because she has tough, she's really great at doing this. It just means she takes so little damage, and then you can use things like Twin Disciplines to get her health back up, and it's really good combo. Like, giving more health on a unit with toughness is great. And to be honest, Vi is the main reason a lot of people have gone a Targon way with this deck, because she's just a great card to add gems to. And to be fair, this is a deck I'll probably look at in the future, which is creating a Vi oriented Targon 1-turn kill deck. Kind of like the Lee Sin decks of the past, but using Vi just to be a bit hipster. And finally, I run Deep Meditation, and this is just to give you extra draw. I actually find with this deck, you don't proc it as much as I'd like, so generally you're paying 5 mana for it, but I find being able to get draw for 5 mana is better than having Progress Day. And Progress Day gives you 3 cards, and it discounts them all by 1, so it effectively costs 5 mana, but you need to pay 8 mana to start off with it, which means it's just a slower card. It comes online later in the game, and in the matchups where you're really running out of card, it's either against aggressive decks and you're getting through all your removal and therefore you need the draw earlier, or you're against the really slow decks, and Granted, in those matchups, progress data is a bit better, but I find in those matchups anyway, we have a lot of tools to deal with slow decks. Like Deny and Ionia as a region just really shuts down any slow game plan. Like Ionia is the king of slow game plan. So I'm kind of happy just sticking with Deep Meditations. If you go against a lot of slow decks, maybe swap this out for some progress days, but for what I'm up against, this has been working well. For the Mulligan with this deck, what you keep really depends on what type of deck you're against. If you're against a control deck, you can be a bit more greedy. If you're against an aggro deck, you really need to look for your removal. So let's break it up into those two matchups. For aggro, you're generally looking for early blockers and good removal. So I'll keep Thermo Beam, Mystic Shot, Chempunked Pickpocket, Solitary Monk, Tasty Feyfolk, and I'll also keep Vi as I consider her a removal card in this deck. For control matchups, you really want to put the pressure on your opponent early and play Heimerdinger on curve and then protect him. For that reason, against control decks, I'll keep Chempunk, Solitary Monk as units to put some early pressure down, Heimerdinger and Vi as your key units, and also Deny to help protect Heimerdinger. If you have Heimerdinger in hand as well, I'd also keep a Twin Disciplines if you don't have a Deny as another way of protecting him. But only in matchups where Twin Disciplines will make the difference. So if you're against Shadow Isles and the main threat is something like Vengeance, it probably doesn't really matter, so you should just mulligan for Deny. Before we get into the game reviews, if you found the video helpful so far, don't forget to leave a like, and subscribe so you don't miss my next deck. I'm planning to revisit the Dragon archetype after the buffs to Shyvana and Eclipse Dragon last week. I think this makes this archetype a lot stronger, and as this was one of my favourite archetypes to play, especially using the Sky's Descent, I'm really excited to try this deck out next week. So for this game, we're up against a Soraka Kench deck, and I usually record these games a week in advance or so. So the patch notes about the Trundle nerfs have just come through, and after this, I expect Soraka Kench really to be the next tier 1 main deck that you're going to see a lot of on ladder. And I think a lot of other people agree with this opinion, so this should be a good test of how my deck does up against meta decks. For this hand, we've got quite a good hand really. Thermo Beams are such an important removal tool into this matchup. They're big threats to Soraka and Kench, and if we can use our removal to deal with them, it gives us such a huge advantage. The only removal we have in this deck to deal enough to them, because they both have 6 health, is Thermo Beam. The main reason we need to deal with them is because this deck doesn't have any way to deal with Star Spring, so we have to kill Soraka and Kench, otherwise they're going to get too much healing off Star Spring, and then win through Star Spring before we can get to our win condition. We also have Vi, and Vi is a great card to keep in your hand early just so her effect can start going off and she can start gaining attack from the start of the game. Tasty Feyfolk is pretty useless in this matchup. We're not worried about her health, so I think we'll just throw away Tasty Feyfolk and keep the rest of the hand here. I choose to throw away one Thermo Beam, and I think that's an okay decision. Like, having multiple copies of the same card in your hand lowers your options, so if I had 2 Thermo Beams in my hand, I would effectively only have 3 different options I can do each turn, because I've only got 3 different cards. So turn 1, we don't have anything we can play. He plays Crusty Codger. It's not looking good. I don't think this is a very good matchup for this deck, just because we have no way to deal with Star Spring, and we're really reliant on getting enough removal to deal with Kench and Soraka. He open attacks here, and we could Mystic Shot to kill the unit, but the problem is he probably has something like Sunblessed Vigor, or Guiding Touch, or even Pale Cascade. He probably wouldn't want to use Pale Cascade here. If we traded Pale Cascade for Mystic Shot, we'd be happy. But it's so unlikely that a Mystic Shot kills the unit, so I don't think it's worth using it here. And we could bank mana, and that would give us 6 mana next turn, so if we play Soraka next turn, we could use Thermo Beam, but if he banks 2 mana, he could have 2 mana to respond to our Thermo Beam, so it could be 6 mana spent doing nothing. So I'd rather play a unit here just to make more use of our mana. He plays Star Spring, and this is really not what we're going to see. If his Star Spring starts getting a lot of value off, we're in trouble. What we really need to do now is start removing all his units, just so he can't get any value off his Star Spring. We don't really have many good options here. Mystic Shot, Twin Disciplines, and Thermo Beam are the only cards we can use. Mystic Shot and Twin Disciplines are fast and burst, so that makes me more inclined to open attack. The only alternative to open attacking would be to play something like Thermo Beam, but using 4 mana to kill his 1 mana unit is really bad value, and we don't want to do that. If we passed, he could develop another unit and get a better trade onto our Chempunk. I think our best bet here is to attack with Chempunk to try and bait him in to trade in with our Chempunk, and that way we can kill his Codger so he gets less healing from his Star Spring. That's the best game plan here. And he will block because he doesn't want us to get the card from Kenpunk hitting Nexus. So for 3 mana, there's plenty of combat tricks he used, but we've got combat tricks of our own to counter whatever he does. So he uses Sunblessed Vigor, and at 1 mana, his deck doesn't have any combat tricks he can use. So we can use Mystic Shot to kill the Codger, or we can use Twin Disciplines to protect our Kenpunk. As I've mentioned quite a few times already, our main game plan is to remove all his units to stop his Star Spring win condition. So the best play here is to use Mystic Shot to kill the Codger. So this turn we don't really have many good options because we have nothing we can develop. He passes, and I'm so happy to see that. If we end the round, we burn 1 more mana than him, but given our hand, it's not a bad decision. His thought process on passing is, I've got more mana to use, so I won't end the round. But he can't see my hand, and my hand has no units, so I will insta-end the round here. I'll be really shocked if I don't. So turn 5, I think we instantly play Vi here. His deck doesn't really run anything to kill it. He could be running something like Sunburst, but I've never seen these decks run Sunburst, so I'm not going to play around it here. So he passes back, and we can easily burn 5 mana of his here. I think it's a no-brainer decision. The main reason he's passed back is because he's got a unit he wants to protect and he doesn't want us to kill it with Vi. We'll lose 4 damage on his Nexus here, but burning 5 of his mana for 4 damage is great. Like I said before, we're the late game deck here, so we really want to push the game to later turns as soon as possible. So he plays Tahm Kench, and that's clearly the unit he was trying to protect. So if we attacked his Nexus last turn, he could have played it last turn, and then this turn he could have tried to eat Vi and used a bunch of combat tricks to keep Tahm Kench alive. Because we passed here, we actually will be able to attack Tahm Kench with Vi on our next turn with our open attack before he has a chance to eat Vi. In terms of options what to do, we draw Solitary Monk, and that is basically just going to be used for Get Excited. We could use Thermo Beam on Tahm Kench, but the big threat for Thermo Beam is Bastion. So our last real options are we can use Deep Meditation for more draw, but if we use Deep Meditation, that will take our Thermo Beam down to 4 damage, which means it would no longer be able to kill Tahm Kench. If we use Flash Brilliance, that will bring our Thermo Beam down to 6 mana, and we can pass after using Flash, so we'll possibly drop below that 4 mana threshold. We're just using Flash here to be mana efficient, because if we passed, we'll probably end up burning 6 mana, which we really don't want to happen. Generally, you want to use Flash when Heimer's on the board, but in this case, we have no Heimerdinger in hand, and we have no good options apart from using Flash here, so that's why this is the best play here. So he passes back again here, so we cannot go for the Thermo Beam here because Bastion is too much of a pain in the ass. So the best play here to me is to use Deep Meditation and then try and kill Tahm Kench on the attacking round. So he plays Box Stoppers here, and he might go for some sort of Pale Cascade play to kill Vi, but we've got Twin Disciplines, so I'm not really afraid of that. So that went exactly as expected, and we're in a really good position here because he's still only at 1 out of 22 on his Star Spring, which is so bad for his deck on turn 7. Here we definitely open attack, because that way if he tries to eat Vi, Vi effectively strikes him twice, once from the combat and once from when he tries to eat Vi. This is obviously assuming he has some response to keep Tahm Kench alive, which he almost definitely has because his deck is filled with cards to help keep Tahm Kench and Soraka alive. It's what the whole deck's built around. But our win condition here is to kill Tahm Kench and Soraka, so we're just going to have to burn through all these protective cards and try and work through them as efficiently as possible. So things like Bastion, we don't want to get too much value. Things like Astral Protection, Sunblessed Vigor, always going to get the same value regardless, so they don't really matter. Bastion's the only one we can really play around and try and make sure it doesn't get too much value. So he uses Astral Protection and Pale Cascade here. So we could go for the Get Excited play, and that will give Vi 1 extra attack, which means she'll kill Tahm Kench. However, if he uses something like Hush, Tahm Kench will live. What I think is the better play here is to let the combat go through, then we can use Thermo Beam to kill Tahm Kench, because at 2 mana the only things he can do are Sunblessed Vigor and Guiding Touch. So as long as we have 6 mana, we can kill Tahm Kench. So an 8 mana Thermo Beam will kill Tahm Kench. There is a question of, do we play the Solitary Monk here? The only risk with this is that it will bring our Thermo Beam down to 5 damage, which might not necessarily kill Tahm Kench. At the same time, if he uses another Sunblessed Vigor or a Guiding Touch, he starts to run out of resources very quickly. I believe it's worth the risk of we play the Solitary Monk to put some more pressure, and then we can use Thermo Beam and see if he's got a response. Like, as I've said multiple times, we just have to work through all his responses here. Okay, he plays Box Ups here, and this is great. This is exactly what we're going to see. This is a definite Thermo Beam onto Tahm Kench. So he's got 2 on his Star Spring. This is really, really good for us. We get another Solitary Monk, which isn't that bad because it's another target before I get excited. He plays the Broadback Protector, and I don't like seeing that, not because of the healing, but because it will damage itself and heal, which means I actually have to be really careful about damaging the Nexus here, because if we don't damage the Nexus, Broadback Protector doesn't take damage and therefore can't heal. Out of our options to play here, we could play Vi, but if we play Vi and he uses another Pale Cascade, which would be his 3rd Pale Cascade, he could kill Vi. And to me, if we don't keep Vi alive here, we will lose the game. So we have to play around it. I really don't like playing around 3 copies or something in hand, but he hasn't had key cards like Soraka or the 0-3, I forget what it's called. So it suggests he might have a bit of an unusual hand, and that could be 3 Pale Cascades. So I think if we pass back here, he will instantly pass to burn our mana. He's been quite aggressive at trying to burn our mana.
I'll protect you.
And so here we can now play Vi. His deck doesn't run any removal. The only sort of removal he has is Challenger units and Tahm Kench, neither of which we need to worry about because it's our attacking turn. So if we attack in here, our Elusive will get 3 damage off, and then we can hook it in, Broadback Protector, and then when he heals the Nexus for 3 health, he will kill himself. So that's actually quite good. So that's the way we're always going to go for combat. The question is, could we be a bit more efficient? Because if we use cards, Vi gets more attack, which means if he uses something to try and save his Broadback Protector, Vi does more damage, and it could be the difference between the Broadback Protector dying and living. So here, we go for the Get Excited on the 3-3, just to force out a response from our opponent. We know he's going to have a response. Here, we could Thermo Beam to try and kill the 3-1. I don't think it's the best use of mana, and he probably still has a response. The best play here is to just attack in now, and if he does nothing, we'll just pass and end the round. The main reason we're not hooking in the 3-1 is because we're afraid of a 3rd Pale Cascade, but also we have a good chance to kill the Broadback Protector here. So he uses Pale Cascade and Hush, which is actually really, really nasty for us. And we don't have any response to that. He had the 3rd Pale Cascade and Hush. It's just, it is what it is. We had to go for that play. There's no way I'm not attacking there. We could try and use Thermo Beam to try and kill one of his units here, but he has 5 mana left, so it's pretty unlikely we'll be able to kill one of his units. So we top deck Heimerdinger here, and this is huge. This is just the card we needed. We really needed another Heimerdinger revive, and just the card we needed. So he plays another Boxtopus, and we're going to be taking a bunch of face damage here, but against this deck, we're not that worried about dying to face damage. The only other thing we would want to do is play Heimerdinger, and if we play Heimerdinger, Heimerdinger dies, and then we definitely lose. So we just need to pass here. If he burns mana and skips his attack, we're really happy. He's been quite aggressive with burning mana, so there's a chance he might do that. The other option we could do is play True Shot Barrage. Really want to save that for when Heimerdinger is on the board to get the turret from it as well. So he attacks in, which gives us a chance to play Heimerdinger here. There might be some consideration to play Solitary Monk first, but I really want a True Shot Barrage here just to try and kill some of his units so his Star Spring doesn't tick up as fast. So he plays Bastion to protect one of his units, and we're so happy with this. And in fact, that's his last box first, so if we kill it here, Heimerdinger is at no threat of dying. And we draw a Vi, which is great. So our only option of killing Boxtopus here is using Thermo Beam. He could have more spells to protect it, but then we'll hook it in with Vi. There's a lot of cards we aren't playing around here. So cards like Astral Protection, Bastion, even if we use Thermo Beam and hook with Vi, we don't kill the Boxtopus. But we can't play around it here because we really need to try and keep our Heimerdinger alive. Additionally, if we use the Thermo Beam now, we get the turret from it, even if he manages to stop us from killing Boxtopus. Uses double shakedown, gives Heimerdinger vulnerable, which I do think is a good play, but using the second one to kill his unit to fizzle the thermal beam so we don't get the turret is very questionable in my opinion. I'm not sure that was the right play. I think that might be him trying to be too smart for his own good. So here he has no cards in hand, so we attack with the 7-1 and hook with Vi. If the 7-1's damage goes through, Broadback Protector will heal and die next turn. If he blocks with Soraka on the 7-1, we're very happy, and because he has no cards in hand, we know he has no response to the combat. So Star Spring is at 12, and because we've played so well around keeping his Star Spring down, it's actually quite low. Here it's definitely time for the signature card of the deck, which is Give It All. We have Heimerdinger on the board. It's going to turn all our units into 7-3 challengers with Tough, which is just insane, and it will give us a T-Rex as well. So he plays Soraka Kench, and at this point he can't attack in, which is great, and we play our T-Hex, and next turn if it gets to it we'll probably play another Give It All to turn all our units into 8/8s. And he surrenders, so unfortunately we don't get to see the big attack with Give It All, but we've given all our units Challenger and we're basically just going to pick his board to pieces, so basically inevitable we're going to win there. And yeah, this was a really good game actually, and it's quite close and a lot of interesting decisions I thought. Hopefully you enjoyed it. As always, if you enjoyed the video or the deck, please leave a like, it makes a big difference to the channel. And so you don't miss my deck next week, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching, and have a good day.